You know that feeling when you're trying to learn something new and it's like your brain just hits a brick wall?
Oh, yeah.
Keep trying to push through, but the information just isn't sticking. It actually reminded me of something highlighted in our material today from the Learn English podcast.
Right, about Leo's little brother.
Exactly. He was in like full on study mode, cramming, watching endless tutorials, flashcards everywhere.
Putting in the hours.
Totally. Trying to learn faster, but instead of feeling smarter, he just felt completely, burnt out and frustrated. Has that ever happened to you listening?
I think it's an incredibly relatable situation. That feeling of mental fatigue, where you're putting in the work, but just not seeing the progress you expect.
Exactly. And the thing is, like Leo's brother, a lot of us think the solution is just to, well, work harder, grind even more.
Hmm.
He even had this idea, apparently, that if it wasn't a struggle, he wasn't really learning properly, which, as our source points out, is a really common misconception.
It really is.
So that's what we wanted to explore today. How you can actually absorb information more effectively, remember it for the long haul, and maybe even find some enjoyment in the process. Because here's a crucial idea from the Learn English podcast. Your brain isn't a machine you just keep loading with data.
No, it's more like a garden, they suggested.
I like that. A garden.
Yeah, it's a compelling analogy, isn't it?
Okay.
So instead of just trying to force information in, we need to think about cultivating the right environment for learning to, well, flourish.
Precisely. So our aim today is to understand how to nurture that learning garden for ourselves. We're diving into the insights from that Learn English podcast YouTube video to figure out how you can learn in a smarter way, not just a harder one, and definitely without hitting that wall of burnout.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's get into why learning can feel like such an uphill battle sometimes and what leads to that dreaded burnout.
Well, a significant factor has to do with how our brains actually process new information.
Yeah.
The Learn English podcast brought up this concept of working memory.
Working memory. Okay.
Yeah, think of it as your brain's temporary workspace. A bit like a mental sticky note, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a limited capacity for how much it can hold at any given time.
I see the connection. It's like when you've got, I don't know, 50 tabs open on your computer browser, and eventually everything just slows down or crashes.
Exactly like that. Your brain can experience a similar kind of overload. When
Right.
you overwhelm your working memory, new information simply can't be properly processed and stored. Then another key reason for burnout highlighted in the YouTube content is the pressure we feel.
The pressure to keep up.
Yeah, to keep pace with others.
Oh, absolutely. And social media really turns up the volume on that, doesn't it?
It really does.
You see all these success stories flashing by, finally fluent in Japanese after 6 months, or launched my coding career in a year. And it's so easy to start questioning your own progress, even if you are moving forward.
And what's really interesting there, and the source pointed this out, is that those online portrayals often lack crucial context.
Yeah, what's missing?
Well, you don't see the years of prior language learning someone might have had, or maybe the 40 hours a week they dedicated to that one specific goal.
Right.
The Learn English podcast call this the highlight reel effect. People naturally share their wins, their triumphs, not the messy struggles and setbacks that are, let's face it, a totally normal part of learning anything.
That's so true. It just leads to these totally unrealistic benchmarks for ourselves.
Hmm.
And when we don't achieve these, seemingly overnight transformations, we can feel like we're failing, even if we're actually making steady progress in our own way.
Exactly. It's so important to remember that everyone's learning path is unique.
Yeah.
Another really common pitfall that definitely contributes to feeling overwhelmed is the urge to learn everything all at once.
Oh, the multi-project trap.
Yeah. The Learn English podcast even shared a personal example. I think it was trying to juggle learning coding, playing the guitar, and photography all at the same time.
Wow. Okay. And the result.
Pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Very little real progress in any of those areas.
Yeah. Oh, I can definitely relate to that. You feel like you're being super productive by having all these projects on the go, but really, you're just eluding your focus, aren't you?
Exactly. Your brain needs sufficient time to truly absorb and integrate new information. Imagine trying to pour a huge jug of water into a tiny glass. It's just going to overflow.
Good analogy.
There's a natural limit to how much new stuff your brain can effectively take in at any one time.
And you know what the Learn English podcast pointed out as a surprisingly overlooked factor in burnout, something we often just skip?
Let me guess.
Rest.
You got it. Rest.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital. There's often this ingrained belief, isn't there, that more study hours automatically equal better learning, but that's just not necessarily true.
Exactly.
Why?
The Learn English podcast explained that rest is actually when your brain does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, processing, consolidating what you've been learning.
Right. It's kind of like how when you're stuck on a problem, sometimes stepping away.
Yeah. And the solution just pops into your head later, maybe in the shower or something. Precisely. What's fascinating is that these periods of downtime allow your brain to forge connections,
Hmm.
between the new information and what you already know. It strengthens those new memories.
Okay.
So if you consistently skip rest and just keep pushing, 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 well, learning becomes significantly harder and much less efficient in the long run.
Okay, so we have a better handle now on why learning can be tough and lead to burnout, but how do you actually recognize when you're pushing yourself too hard? What are the signs?
Well, one of the main indicators mentioned in the Learn English podcast is mental exhaustion. You
Right.
sit down to learn, maybe you're even excited about it, but even after a really short period, you just feel utterly drained.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. It's like staring at a page, reading the same sentence over and over.
And it just doesn't register.
Exactly. Your brain feels completely depleted.
Right. The source used a great analogy. It's like your phone battery being down to just 1%.
Yeah, struggling.
It's struggling to perform even the simplest tasks. And then there's what they described as a really significant warning sign, something really important to watch out for.
Oh, what's that?
It's when you start to feel apathetic, kind of indifferent towards learning.
Ah, okay.
You might have been really excited about a subject initially, but suddenly it just feels like a chore, a real burden.
Right.
And the frustrating part is, even when you try to force yourself to keep going, you're not really absorbing anything anyway. That's a clear signal from your brain saying, hey, I need a break.
That makes perfect sense. It's like your internal motivation just powers down. And for me, one of the most disheartening signs is when you put in the hours, you study, watch videos, whatever, but then later, when you try to recall that information,
It's just gone.
vanished.
Poof. Exactly. The Learn English podcast connected this to learning just for the sake of finishing, ticking a box, not for truly understanding the material.
Like speed watching a movie.
Yeah. And then afterwards realizing you barely remember the plot.
Yeah.
The information didn't actually stick. It didn't get embedded in your memory.
Okay, speaking of things that seem productive but maybe aren't, I have to admit, I used to think multitasking was some kind of superpower.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, why just read when you could read, listen to music, and check your phone all at the same time?
Not efficient.
Right.
And how did that usually work out for you? Did you remember much?
No, you're spot on. It turns out, according to the insights from the Learn English podcast, that true multitasking isn't really a thing.
Not for complex tasks, no. What we're actually doing is task switching, rapidly shifting our attention between different activities.
Task switching. Okay.
And what's really interesting, or maybe not surprising, is that research consistently shows this constant switching significantly hinders learning efficiency.
So it feels busy, but it's not effective.
Pretty much. Instead of boosting productivity, your brain becomes more scattered, less capable of retaining new information properly. It leads to confusion, not efficiency.
So my brain wasn't being a super processor. It was just getting overloaded and kind of worse. Okay, so now for the good news. Are there strategies for learning effectively, maybe even at a decent pace, without feeling like your brain's about to short circuit? Because I'm all for learning, but I prefer it to be a more, chill experience.
Absolutely. The Learn English podcast outlines several really practical approaches. The first one they mentioned is microlearning.
Micro-learning.
Yeah, which simply involves breaking down your learning into very small, manageable chunks.
Okay, bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. Instead of trying to tackle an entire complex topic at once, you just concentrate on one specific concept or task.
That sounds much less daunting. Like instead of trying to read a whole textbook chapter, maybe just focus on one key idea or section.
Precisely. Then there's space learning, which the source highlighted with the Sapita study.
Space learning, right.
This research indicated that reviewing information in short sessions spread out over time dramatically improves memory retention by as much as 200% compared to cramming.
200%.
Yeah. Think of it like watering a plant regularly versus just flooding it once in a while.
Okay.
The consistent, smaller inputs allow the roots of memory to grow stronger over time. It leads to a much more resilient and deeper understanding.
So, okay, instead of trying to memorize, say, 100 new vocabulary words in one painful session.
You learn maybe 10 a day, and then you revisit them tomorrow and in 3 days and next week. Those increasing intervals.
Right, you space it out.
Exactly. And this principle applies to pretty much any kind of learning. So
Mm.
think about what you're currently trying to learn. Would it be better to cram it all in last minute or divide it up and review it periodically?
Seems obvious when you put it like that.
It often is. Another valuable strategy is setting short-term, achievable goals,
Oh, I like that. So instead of this huge, intimidating goal like become fluent in Spanish,
which can feel miles away.
yeah, you set smaller targets like learn 5 new travel phrases this week.
Exactly. It makes the whole learning process feel less overwhelming and much more attainable. And the great thing about short-term goals is you get those quick wins.
Little victories.
Yeah. Each time you achieve a mini milestone, it gives you that sense of accomplishment, a little dopamine hit, and motivates you to keep going. It's like clearing levels in a video game, right?
Yeah, you get that reward that makes you want to play the next level.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Okay, what other tools do we have in our relaxed learning toolkit?
Making learning enjoyable is a really key element. The Learn English podcast suggested incorporating different formats and approaches. Keep things engaging.
So mixing it up. Instead of just passively reading articles, maybe listen to podcasts.
Watch informative videos.
Use interactive learning apps or even like game-based flashcards.
Exactly. If you're learning history, for instance, watch a documentary, listen to a related podcast on your commute. Maybe test yourself with a quick online quiz. Varying your methods helps maintain interest and, crucially, motivation.
Makes sense. Keep it fresh. And we absolutely can't discuss effective learning without stressing the critical role of sleep again.
Oh, yes, the ultimate brain reboot. I think people still underestimate just how vital sleep is for locking in memories.
Totally. While you're sleeping, your brain is actively working. It's organizing and strengthening the new information you encounter during the day. Research consistently shows that getting enough sleep significantly boosts problem-solving skills, creativity, and, importantly, recall.
So pulling those all-nighters before a test?
Generally counterproductive. You're almost always better off getting a decent night's sleep.
Good advice. And it's not just about resting the brain, right? The source also touched on moving your body. Physical activity.
That's right. Even just a short walk can be incredibly beneficial for learning.
How so?
Well, exercise boosts focus and creativity. It increases blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which in turn helps with concentration and cognitive function.
Okay, interesting.
So learning isn't just about sitting still at a desk, it's also about taking care of your physical well-being. It's all connected.
This all makes so much sense when you put it together. And the overarching message seems to be that maybe rushing the learning process isn't the best strategy after all.
Precisely. The Learn English podcast reminded us that learning fast isn't always the best. Trying to cram everything in quickly often leads to a very superficial understanding.
Skin-deep knowledge.
Exactly. And you're much more likely to forget it pretty quickly, too. It's far better to aim for genuine understanding, for mastery, at your own comfortable pace.
Like slow cooking versus microwaving.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
It might take longer, but the depth of flavor, the quality, it's just far superior.
Right.
So the real key is smart learning, figuring out your own optimal rhythm and making the whole process sustainable so you don't burn out.
Slow down to learn smart, maybe. Now, the Learn English podcast also flags some key phrases related to learning. Let's quickly recap those, make sure we've got them. First up was hit a wall. What does that mean in this context?
That's when you reach a point where making more progress just feels incredibly difficult, almost impossible. Like I was studying hard, but after 3 hours, I just hit a wall and couldn't take any more in.
Got it. Okay. And the next phrase, the highlight reel, we touched on this earlier with social media. Remind us.
Right. It refers to that selectively positive version of life people often show online. All successes, no struggles.
And the impact on learning.
It can create unrealistic expectations and make others feel inadequate about their own perfectly normal learning journey.
Okay. Then we had spaced learning. What's the quick definition and benefit?
That's the strategy of reviewing information in short, spread-out sessions over time instead of one massive cramming session. The benefit, much, much better long-term memory retention.
Right, like that 200% figure. Okay,
Yeah.
and task switching.
That's when you rapidly jump between different tasks, like studying while checking your phone while listening to music. It divides your attention and makes learning less effective. Not true multitasking.
Gotcha. Finally, mental exhaustion. What does that look like?
That's the state of extreme brain fatigue from prolonged mental effort, like hours of studying. Makes it really hard to concentrate or process anything new. You might say, after that marathon study session, mental exhaustion hit hard and I couldn't focus anymore.
Perfect. Now, let's do a quick check to sort of cement this, and this is for you listening into. First question. According to the Learn English podcast, what is the highlight reel effect on social media and how does it impact learners?
The source highlighted that it's people sharing only their successes online, leaving out the struggles, and this can create unrealistic expectations, making others feel discouraged about their own pace or progress.
Spot on. And final question. Based on the insights from the Learn English podcast, what are some likely consequences of studying without taking enough breaks?
Well, they emphasize that studying without breaks often leads to um, mental exhaustion, a reduced ability to actually absorb information effectively, and then difficulty recalling what you thought you learned later on.
Excellent. You've got it. So, the core message, really, that we've unpacked in this deep dive is that learning shouldn't feel like a stressful, draining chore.
No, definitely not.
It's about finding those smart, effective ways to absorb information, to genuinely understand it, and, crucially, to retain it over time without completely frying your brain in the process.
Absolutely. So we really encourage you listening to take these strategies to heart. Think about how you can integrate them into whatever you're learning right now. Go forth and learn, but, learn in a way that actually supports your well-being.
And maybe as a final thought to ponder, thinking back to that garden analogy, consider the specific kind of garden your brain needs for the particular topic you'll be diving into next. What kind of sunlight, water, and soil, metaphorically speaking, will help that specific knowledge flourish for you?
Or maybe just reflect on one small change you could make to your learning routine starting today, based on what we've talked about. What's that first small step going to be?
Good question. Our thanks again to the Learn English podcast on YouTube for the really valuable insights in their content that sparked this conversation.
And thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into learning smarter, not just harder. We hope you found it helpful.